How important is culture? Answers will vary from place to place, with some communities being more closely tied to their heritage than others. Should you ask my grandmother, a Moldovan immigrant that has been away from her country for more than 20 years and now lives in a gigantic European metropolis, she would give you an answer similar to, "It's not very important because I've had greater things to worry about." And should you ask my great-grandmother, an 85-year-old woman of age, which has never left the country and has lived all of her life in this remote countryside village, she would have a drastically different outlook, her cultural identity being a big part of who she is. Although mother and daughter, from one generation to the next, so much seems to have changed, and it is not only influenced by the passing of time, but by the strikingly different environments they currently live in. So, as time inevitably passes and the Earth revolves around the sun, new links are formed across the globe, and suddenly you can get from one side of it to the other in the mere span of a few hours. With communications and transport facilitated, came a phenomenon widely known as globalization. Simply put, everyone, gradually but surely, began to know more about places very far away from them, and suddenly got the opportunity to experience the most distant corners of the world through the simple click of a mouse. Never would have people 100 years ago thought that they can just hop on a plane that will take them to the most foreign destination imaginable and have them back home in less than one day, less than a few hours. What once would have been an arduous journey at sea became pleasurable tourism. The globe is starting to open itself to people, so to say. International trade and the exchange of beliefs, values, and practices has intensified rapidly over the last century. This has allowed most nations to develop freely and created a new outlook on the future of the human race. Surely, this all amounts to a beautiful and meaningful change within our lives. After all, I would not have been speaking here today if it were not for the same exact process that led to the creation of such a culturally diverse community in Rossall School. However, there is a paradox around globalization. While it has enabled humans to interact on a global scale, it also poses a great threat to individual communities and cultures. Globalization catalyzes cultural homogenization, which is the process in which distinct cultures become more similar in terms of their beliefs, values, and practices. This may lead to cultural erosion and eventual extinction. Each unique culture loses its authenticity, and so do the people that belong to it. An example of this may be the way of dress, since different communities have diverse attire based on their traditions. However, because of the effects of cultural homogenization, all people tend to dress the same nowadays, with jeans and t-shirts being worn universally. Take a minute to think about when was the last time you wore cultural dress, and whether it is generally accepted to do so in public. When have you last seen a person on the street doing so? In this newfound society, mainly speaking about the last 100 years of evolution, it is not considered normal or appropriate to wear traditional clothing in the public setting. And why is that so, we ask? Well, because simply the common norms have changed, and people have all begun to want and desire to wear the same thing in order to fit in with the so-called global community. Although seemingly harmless, by forgetting to connect with their values, many cultures fade away and disappear as a result. Such a fate afflicts many indigenous communities, but it may as well affect people living in the common modern-day society, like you and me. There have been times when I, wearing traditional dress as part of my traditional musical experiences back at home, noticed weird stares or negative reactions from people that I did not even know. I was seen as embarrassing for embracing my culture on a minimum basis. So, how should indigenous communities that devote themselves entirely to the cause feel about this bias against them. I believe this calls for a change from attitude from us. Another example of how cultural homogenization has affected all of us, and maybe not in the best of ways, is music. Try turning on the radio at any given time of the day, and most posts will be playing songs that may sound similar to you, even if you hadn't heard that exact song before. I'm sure this is something we can all relate to, and it is simply the result of the dominant pop culture music trend. All music now starts to sound the same. It all follows a strict pattern and rarely does it stray from the typical model and still manages to gain success and attention. We have found ourselves unable to progress musically as a society because there are no more individual sounds, no diversity in instrumentals or production represented in mainstream media. Well, from personal experience, the fact that I was performing traditional music for over 10 years was mostly frowned upon when I would talk about it with people my age. They saw it unfit, that I was, I quote, wasting my time with music that would never be popular or worldly acclaimed, that traditional music was not nearly as important as other genres because not a lot of cool people enjoyed it anymore. Frankly, that did not include me or my friends or anyone that values their cultural heritage in some way. However, even so, I'm not standing here to speak against pop music or the conventional manner of dress because I tend to follow these trends all the same. There is nothing wrong with accepting change because, in fact, humans are creatures that were made to adapt and evolve. And frankly speaking, the process that I'm speaking of, globalization, has been going on in some shape or form ever since humanity has existed. The trade and acquisition of culture has long been present in society. From the ancient times, when tribes would interact with each other only through the exchange of resources and precious artifacts, to the modern-day trade system, relations beyond borders have always been important to economic growth and intellectual development within a country. Just think about how different the world would have been had there been no communication of ideas between nations. So many discoveries and advancements would have gone unnoticed, and so many people would have suffered from it. The people of the world have always desired free, efficient communication. So, why are we facing a crisis right now? Well, because even though globalization did come with its positive changes, it also came with a lot of setbacks. We have to be aware of the negative effects of globalization and work towards protecting our culture from harm. The only efficient, real solution, and the fastest one to this issue is to simply be present within our cultures and express ourselves through the unique traditions we are each blessed with. By simply keeping it in your mind, you do contribute positively against cultural erasure and such effects. So, I say, let's take it in our hands to protect these one-of-a-kind customs from harm and connect with our heritage. Only by doing so can we keep the flames of each of our unique cultures burning with vitality. So, in the end, what is the answer to my question? Why is culture important to us? Why should it be? Well, I believe that the answer can only be found within ourselves and within the way our upbringing came through. Culture means different things to different people. Culture may be a source of comfort to many individuals that struggle in finding their place in the world, including me. Culture is definite proof of humanity's existence and progression, not documented, but lived. Culture is a second language to many. Certainly, belonging to a culture does not mean that you cannot go and assimilate yourself with others, but see it like this. Without any solid ground, how can any bird propel itself to fly upwards? We should all go back to our roots and explore our beginnings to find our eventual ends. Only by doing so can we get closer to finding our true identities and fly off to explore this ever-changing world. Thank you.